There are so many different ways to approach Lent. And when I do my planning retreat, and those of you who were on the planning retreat and came to the replay last week saw this slide. Lent, the season itself, has many different theological themes. And oftentimes we don't dig deep into the variety of those things. We get kind of stuck. Our communities get stuck on one way of looking at Lent. And a very popular way is sort of confession, turning around, which is a very important part of Lent, but it's not the only thing, right? It's not even how Lent started. So preparation for baptism is actually how Lent started. That was the origins of the development of the season of Lent. It was a preparation for the catechumens to be baptized in the middle of the night. Oh my gosh, we have a second century text that sort of unpacks what it was like in the middle of the night on Easter Eve, so that the catechumens could die and rise with Christ at cockcrow of Easter morning. Isn't that deep, rich symbolism? So actually, preparation for baptism is a deep, rich, and original theological theme for Lent, that journey to new life. And so you're going to see in a moment that we have done various different series to tease out these theological themes. Claimed, named, adopted, washed, this being part of the body of Christ is another big theological theme for Lent. Being on a journey, right? This is a popular one, being on a journey, being a follower of Jesus Christ. What does that mean as he makes his way toward that cross and toward the resurrection path? Wilderness wandering. Sometimes we focus in Lent on that kind of wandering, sort of not knowing, being in the liminal spaces, right? The spaces between. Conversion, change, turning around, new start, healing. This is another big theme for Lent. Getting right, integrity, discerning next steps. Another great thing that you could do. And of course, slowing down, contemplation, cocooning, finding that more time with the holy, more time in contemplation. Now, it's important as we lead our communities of faith that we offer to folks a variety of ways to approach every liturgical season, because friends, Lent comes around every year. Like clockwork, right? And this year it comes around and Ash Wednesday starts on Valentine's Day. Hello. Well, I'll get into that when I get into our new series in just a little while. So what do you do if you're going to give up chocolate? Well, maybe giving up is not going to be the total first thing of our Lent series this year. It's going to be getting up to something rather than giving something up. So we're going to get to that in a moment. But these are rich themes. And so as you discern, you want to think about what have we spent a lot of time on in Lent? And maybe what theological themes do we want to tease out and offer a wider theological vocabulary, banquet, whatever metaphor you want to use. So I'm going to go through these, all the different fully scripted series that we have. You can get to each one of these and dive deeper, because each one of these is going to have a Get Ready webinar, like the one I'm going to do for the new series. And so you can dive deeper into each one of these by going to worshipdesignstudio.com/Lent. And then you click on each series and it takes you into a page that tells you much, much more about them. But let me give you some highlights here and focus on some of the differences and the theological themes for each one of these to show you and help you discern what maybe is the right spiritual journey for your community this Lent. All right, so let's start with the very first one that I ever did, Gifts of the Dark Wood. The theological emphasis is journey. It's wandering in the wilderness, lessons in tough times. My friend Eric Elnes wrote a book by the same name, and I based the series on that. We collaborated on it. And Gifts of the Dark Wood for him are those times. The dark wood is those times when we're on a path and maybe we can't see the end of the path. We don't know where we are. We're feeling a bit lost. Perhaps some hard things have happened in our lives or in the world. And instead of trying to get out of it immediately, like that's our human instinct, is just let me get off of this. Let me find my place. Let me find the end of this path. Instead of rushing to get off of it, what Eric says is that we can we can learn some things in that lostness. There's some gifts in the dark woods that we can help us in those times when we feel lost. So one of my favorite theme songs, the first one that Chuck and I wrote together, There's a Path, is one of the highlights for me in this one. Again, based on that book. And so you can use that book as a book study, but also Eric we have an optional add-on with Eric's sermons from that. And then we also have a Holy Week journey of monologues that are just absolutely beautiful, kind of highlighting people who were with Jesus in that Holy Week journey. And we're feeling a bit like it was the dark woods as well. I'm going to show you some pictures. The great thing about using a series from past years is that you have the examples of what people before you have done. And pictures, are worth 1,000 words. Well, this is the setup and the elements, the visual installation elements that we suggested as we developed this. But let's continue to see what churches did with it. You can see that the sparseness of the limbs, the rocks, the candles, the brown kind of burlappy material really lends itself. Here's another picture of what someone did with this. You can do it as simple as you want to, or more complex. Here's a lovely one where they use not only the 3-dimensional, but the 2-dimensional behind that. Just absolutely lovely. It really is going to depend on your space, how you create that environment. This is a lovely one where they use lights, uplights to really bring not only the what do you call them, twigs, but the shadows of the twigs. All right, so roll down justice, friends. The theological emphasis on this one is baptismal theology. This is one that goes through our baptismal rites Sunday by Sunday, pulls out those things. And I used really an ecumenical sort of set of things that many denominations use in their baptismal rites to talk about justice, a justice emphasis. How are we called to justice, to be justice makers by those rites, those baptismal rites that we went through, if we went through them as a way of being part of the Christian community? And so the highlights, music by Mark Miller. He has a book, an actual book called Roll Down Justice with many congregational friendly songs. And so I pulled out one each week to highlight, and they're super easy to learn. So I think your congregation is just going to love that if you do it. I know that past congregations have done that, and then they continued to sing these songs as part of their regular repertoire. Visual congregational prayers. You're going to see some pictures in just a moment of people having written on strips of fabric, because that main scripture for this one is let justice roll down like waters, right? In righteousness like a mighty stream. And so creating a waterfall tapestry made out of our prayers is the visual emphasis. And in Holy Week, of course, the culminating thing would be a reaffirmation of baptism, as we have looked at our baptismal rites all through. And so there's a beautiful vigil where you can reaffirm your baptism. Wonderful highlight. So let's take a look. Here's what we put in our, suggestions for these prayers. And here's what people did. Oh my goodness. It's going to depend on your architecture. Here's a church that had a great big, wall in front of the choir loft. And so they started them there, and look what ended up. They had so many that it just flowed over that table and out over the kneeling rail, and it just became this beautiful waterfall. Just love that. Here's another iteration, more simple but beautiful. So if you have a smaller church, you're not going to have as many. This is a wonderful idea. Here's another one where they put those on the cross, and people found that really meaningful. Another one that's put on the cross, but if you can see it, this is further into the Lent season, and there's many more there. Just beautiful tapestry. And here's another one where it kind of came down off of a banner stand and then over another shorter banner stand down to the baptismal font. So we want to connect that idea of the waterfall, the justice rolling like waters, and our baptismal rites. Just amazing. And here's a little bit more simple, but just using the blue fabric, and anytime it just flows down, there's another one. We get that idea of flowing water, of waterfall. Here's the last one I want to show you, and that is just this beautiful cascade over to a baptismal font that's sort of highlighted. Usually we would have that bowl down in that, but here it's on top of it to really bring it more into the view of the congregation. All right, friends, that's been a favorite. I'm guessing that in the chat there may be people who are saying, "Yeah, we did that series." Right? If you didn't, if you saw your pictures, I'm not taking time to attribute all the churches who did this, but we do have them posted and are posting more. We used to have Facebook groups, and so we're moving all those photos from past years over into our website. Okay, Busy, another one of our favorite Lent series. The second half of it, it's Busy Reconnecting with an Unhurried God. And this is that theological emphasis that is clearing time, making more time for God, which is very much a Lent emphasis in the Eastern Church, the Eastern Christian Church. So clearing out our schedules a little bit, making more time for the holy, fasting from hurry and worry. Now, I will tell you that this was really popular, and the message really hit home for a lot of folks. And it's interesting. People haven't been doing it as much, like in lockdown, because our schedules went, kind of got disrupted. But now we're kind of back. And has your schedule filled like mine has, back to like pre-pandemic levels or worse? Many of us are taking on more responsibilities because of the shifts that pandemic brought. So it might be a good one to do. The highlights of this one: a prayer chair in the chancel. So doing the prayers of the people from a chair, a rocking chair, or a chair like this one, a beach chair, and a God box. And that is, putting our worries into a God box, letting God hold those for us. There's a Lent retreat included, even some fun suggestions for making little cell phone sleeping bags. Yeah, so some time off the cell phone, right? As a Lent practice, easy multi-voice dramatizing each week. And I'm going to give you an example because I just love these. This is part of the dramatizing thing, bringing things to life. In the threshold moment every week, there are 3 voices that do various things. This is the one for Palm Sunday. Did you hear Jesus is in town? What? How did I not get that memo? I hear there's going to be a parade. Scrolling through the phone calendar. Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to work this morning. Where is it? All the way out by the city gate. Oh my, it's just so hard to get everything in these days, but I know it'll be quite the event. Well, he'll probably be back through here soon, maybe next time, which we all know there is no next time. But we do that, don't we? We say, I'll catch it next time. We put things off. We put important things off. And so this is a series that invites us to examine that. So we make some suggestions about prayer chairs, about customizing them, whatever works for your congregation. Here's some things that people did. Keeping it simple, but having a little prayer thing in there. This was out in a church hallway where people could just rest. There's their prayer box, and on it says, when your heart starts to worry and your mind cannot rest, put your prayers down on paper and let God do the rest. So people really did a lot of wonderful interpretations of this idea. There's a couple of rocking chairs in the chancel. I will tell you that churches told me who did this that it was really hard to get rid of the prayer chair as the place where the pastor prayed after the series, because people got so attached to it. Also because what we suggest is that you're modeling that for people in the chancel, but then invite them to have their own prayer chair at home for their daily devotions. All right, here's another one. Yeah, just, a simplicity. Sometimes simple is best. And here, isn't that great? I just had to put that one in because that's what happens, is that when we use a symbol that helps us to solidify that thematic idea, that time spending with God, all ages can access that message. All right, here's one that I love that they created, and I love those things on the walls. The clock without the tick, 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 right? Open up your time, and then they made a sort of clock-shaped themed for the title on the wall as well. So anyway, just huge creativity. This is the last one, and that is, here's a church that made a timeout chair at a local flea market, and just a place for people to sit down and rest and maybe talk to the pastor. This is the pastor. And so, just a wonderfully creative ways to extend the idea and the theme and the message beyond our four walls. Okay, listen, hearing that still small voice and finding your own. As I revisit these series, I can see every place where I wrote every one of these. And this was a time when I was teaching seminary, and we did this at our seminary, and it was so wonderful because the listening we do in class sometimes is a very different kind of listening than tuning into our own still small voice inside, and that of the divine spirit. So the spiritual practice of contemplation, finding our own voice, highlights from this prayer stations, a new prayer station featured each week. So adding on journaling in handmade booklets, just a wonderful, I learned years and years ago how to make an easy booklet that you can then use as for journaling. And one of the things that we suggest is that you start with them in the pews the first Sunday, and then you let people know that you're going to be moving those around. So there's a time in the service to journal a little bit, to write a prayer, and then you invite people to leave those and you switch them around, and then you can read somebody else's prayer as well as write your prayer that next week and the next week. Holy Week reflective Stations of the Cross journey that brings together both the ancient scriptures, but also modern day situations that connect to those stations of the cross. And so we give you everything you need in order to create those stations of the cross. All right, so here's those booklets. I do a how-to video, and here's a church. They really got into it, and they started making them, and they couldn't stop making them. And so they started making them for people outside the church. It's really super easy. Here's some pictures of the stations, various stations that people did. And each week the theme about listening and the scripture leads to an experience of a station. All right, friends. So entering the Passion of Jesus, picturing ourselves in the story. This is one of my favorites. And it's one of my deeply held ones, because this is the one that a lot of people, that was new and a lot of people were doing when we went into lockdown in the middle of Lent in 2020. And so, friends, if you did that and you want to redo it, I think go for it so you can feel the fullness of this series. So the theological emphasis is actually the Holy Week story and our place in that. So often people come to Palm Sunday and then they come back on Easter, and they miss all those Holy Week stories. And if you don't do the Passion story on Palm Passion Sunday, then they miss that. And so this is the way of taking all of Lent to go through that Holy Week story and really lift it up. And I really wanted to make a series that would do that. The highlights, one of my favorite theme songs, Enter the Story, is just powerful. Again, Chuck Bell, my collaborator. Diverse artwork. I was working with Reverend Dr. Kathy Black, who is helping the Vanderbilt Lectionary Library collect more diverse depictions of Jesus for their library, a library that you can use and you can access. And so as she was doing that year, I worked with her to choose artwork from that collection for each Sunday. And then I wrote monologues based on a character in those pictures, not main characters, but most often the standby characters, right? So it's putting ourselves on the sidelines in that place. And hearing these monologues and people ruminating about that. And there's a book study related to this, because there's a book by the same name, Entering the Passion of Jesus, by Amy Jill Levine. And so it's a wonderful accompaniment to that. So here's an example of one of those pictures. You see Peter washing Jesus' feet, but then you see this person on the sideline over there on the left. And so I wrote a monologue from their point of view, imagining that he was the servant who was supposed to be washing everybody's feet, and Jesus took that role, and how aghast or how surprising that was, and what that meant to him as a servant. So that's the kind of monologues, inviting people to take their pictures in a picture frame, in an empty picture frame, so that we can see ourselves in the story. And so here's some scenarios of ways that churches did this, the different empty picture frames. And then, of course, when we went on lockdown, everybody had to do it from their homes. Here's some empty frames in a home backdrop, right? So we had to do some fast work there. But some people chose to print the pictures for each week into frames and create that in their church. And some people chose to bring pictures that were on their walls, art that's on their walls, and also highlight that on their table. And then here's a lovely picture. I love this picture of someone, and this was their very first online worship, right? Do we remember that? I don't want you to go back there and feel all the feels, but yes, we all remember that. But what I love is that apparently they were taking pictures of people from their congregation, putting them on this family tree, and so really picturing themselves in the story. What a wonderfully creative way to adapt that. And here's this poor couple that had to get married in lockdown. And so that was what was in the church at the time, the picture frame. And so they took this picture as their wedding picture, as one of their wedding pictures. And I just love that. And that is, the series really talks about those moments in our lives and the sacred moments of our lives. When you put them in a picture frame, it reminds us to hold those precious, to hold that memory as sacred, in that all of our lives is part of that story. Okay, so holy vessels, theological emphasis was brokenness and healing. We were still in lockdown at this point. The highlights, glass vessels and beach glass as the anchor image. Beach glass is something that was once whole and then was broken, and then after tumbling in the sea, it's considered a precious mineral gem. And so that idea that healing is possible in the midst of brokenness. The exploration of our churches as healing hubs. How could we embrace even a sort of medieval parish kind of feeling that the church is not just a place where you come to worship, but it's also a place where you come to give blood, and you come to get groceries, you come to whatever the healing is. But think about how your church is particularly poised to be a place of healing in your community, in the wider community. And then, of course, a Lent devotional book. This is one of the first times that we began to do devotional booklets, because we were in lockdown, because we wanted to keep extending the experience beyond the sanctuary. So here's me doing a photo shoot of these beautiful glass vessels and some of the beach glass. And then people did this in many different ways at their churches. Just beautiful. And simple. Here's someone who has that beach glass on the table behind, really simple and not so large. Here's a beautiful compilation of broken glass and whole glass. Here is a much larger installation, and obviously on Palm Sunday, so adding those palms to the scene. And this is in one of the weeks we suggest that people make a little collage and take a picture of it and share that as a way of sharing about their own healing. And this is somebody who did this beautifully lit scenario about healing from addiction. And so just amazing. Good Enough is based on Kate Bowler's book called Good Enough. And it is lectionary. It is year C, I believe. And that was a hugely popular one. The anchor image was a ladder garden, meaning stop climbing ladders to some perfectionist height and just bloom right where you're planted. So, oh my gosh, it was so popular. And of course, Kate Bowler is unbelievable. And reading her book, Good Enough, alongside it was Amazing. The only people that didn't like that series, interestingly enough, were the perfectionists that thought, oh, good enough. That's for slackers. I was like, oh yeah, and that's the point. It's that we hold people to such perfectionist ideals and we have so little mercy around that. Last year, looking for love. Confession, right relationship was the focus of this, looking for love in all the wrong places, right? So, what is right relationship and where do we look for love that's actually not giving us love? So, the highlights, the Scrabble anchor image was very popular, very easy to do, a wonderfully memorable kind of thing. The Kyrie prayer song was a highlight for me because it's one of my favorite Kyries and really brought a beautifully meditative sense and opportunities for testimony from people about where they have found true love, not just in love couple relationships, but love in community, love in support, all those kinds of things. So it gives your folks a chance to offer those testimonies. Here's a picture that I took of my Scrabble board, and one of the things that we did in children's time. Excuse me, very dry here. And here is an example that I gave of how you could make giant Scrabble tiles to use on your table or elsewhere. Here's another creative thing that a church did. I think those were probably leftover crates from our Advent series called The Inn, but how wonderful to recycle that and use it again. We even had somebody who took all of the words, all the titles to all of the services and figured out how to do them all on a Scrabble board. It took a while. Everybody was working on it in the website. And then here's another way that people did it. I mean, it's just the possibilities are endless. So friends, our new series, and I'm going to go into a deep dive in just a moment on this and do what we call a Get Ready webinar. Every one of these series has a Get Ready webinar, which is a video recording of me talking about all of the materials in the downloads and how you can use them and some alternatives, some examples, and how to adapt. Friends, that is what we do here in the Worship Design Studio. We give you lots of ideas for the theme. We give you lots of materials, and then you adapt for your context. We can't know. And we can't design something that is one size fits all because we know churches are not one size fits all. We design things that then you can curate. Liturgy is the work of the people, and we take that very seriously. So we don't just give you a prepackaged thing that is the way it is, and you have to use it that way. We give you the ability to make it your own, even in the printed things, right? Because we want you to do that. So theological emphasis on this, the small doingness is okay, right? We have big problems in the world, and sometimes they feel completely overwhelming, and we think there's nothing we can do. So this is a focus on being up to micro practices and incremental steps, because that's actually the only way anything gets done. And so focusing on the beauty of the small things that we can do. So get up to something instead of giving something up for Lent, right? It's a different and an uplifting take on Lent. The children's time is based on the wonderful Up movie. And, it was long enough ago that there's a whole generation of kids who maybe haven't seen it yet and will be turned on to that. And it's not just a kids movie. It is an animation, but it is for all generations. And it's our first daily journal. We've done weekly journals before, but we are doing a daily journal, and we're digitizing it so that we can have people from all over the country who are doing this series contributing to it online. And I'm going to show you that in our deep dive. So friends, those are all of the fully scripted series. Now, if you're a subscriber, you have access to every one of them right this minute. So you can go in, you can look at all of the materials to discern. If you're not a subscriber, you can buy these a la carte. You will go and look at the pages that show you examples, show you the synopses and scriptures, show you the overview, and show you examples of one of the services so you can see what that looks like.